So folks, this is the history that the Republican Party does not want to tell you about. Now the Democratic Party has its dark history. So both parties are guilty. Who else could be more patriotic than people who were formerly enslaved by this country to turn around and fight for its honor? Now, Abraham Lincoln, despite what people say about him or try to paint a shining picture and cast him as some sort of folk hero, he was not. So as I was studying, I came across some other information, and it had to deal with the climate leading up to the Civil War. You have to look at the conditions and the scene, if you will. In the South, their primary economic engine was slavery, human capital. Without slaves out there working those fields and curating those crops, they don't make money. What you had going on at the time was you had slave rebellions, Nat Turner, John Brown at Harper's Ferry. You had a lot of different things going on. And so this had the slave owners very nervous at the time. They were being extra vigilant because they realized that, look, if we have all these insurrection and rebellions going on, this is going to be bad for our business. Then couple that with the Underground Railroad. You had a lot of enslaved people who were tired of waiting on change to come. So they took matters into their own hands and they escaped. They ran north for their freedom. So it wasn't just that we had some benevolent people who just felt in their hearts that slavery is evil and it had to end, that we're just going to end it. That didn't happen. We forced the issue. So I want to make sure that people get a clear picture on how these things came about. Now we fast forward a little bit. You got a crumbling economy in the South because the labor force is being drained in the South. Now you got these formerly enslaved people running for their freedom. They're showing up in the North. What do we do with these people? Well, Abraham Lincoln, and I'll get to him in just a second, tell you a little bit more about that, but Abraham Lincoln had a decision to make. Now he ended up allowing formerly enslaved people to fight in the Union Army. He also used them for intelligence. But let me give you a little bit of background on Abraham Lincoln. And I got some notes here because I wanted to make sure that I quote the man correctly. Now, Abraham Lincoln, despite what people say about him or try to paint a shining picture and cast him as some sort of folk hero, he was not. And so for Republicans today who like to basically hold him up as a shining example of the party of Lincoln and we're the ones who freed the slaves. But let me tell you who Abraham Lincoln was. In September of 1858, while in Charleston, Illinois, and this was the fourth debate with Douglas, he was quoted as saying, "I will say then that I am not, nor have been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races. I am as much as any other man in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race." This is who Abraham Lincoln was. He did not believe that you and I were equal. He did not believe that there should be equal protection under the law for black people. As a matter of fact, his answer to slavery was colonization. So what do I mean by that? So his plan was emancipate them, and then we ship them off to places like Liberia and Haiti and I believe Central America. That was his solution to slavery. Now, he also believed that slavery was immoral And he wanted to prevent the spread of slavery to the western colonies like California, Oregon, etc. He wanted slavery to stay in the south of the Mason-Dixon line. That was his moral compass. And he also was quoted as saying that if he could save the Union without freeing a single soul, he would do it. And if he could save the Union by freeing formerly enslaved people, that he would do it also. So this was a purely strategic and transactional move for him. So I don't want people to get the wrong idea about Abraham Lincoln and about the proclamation that he signed, the Emancipation Proclamation. This was purely transactional. So what was he going to do with these black folks who were showing up in the North? When the war started, the Union Army was being decimated. They were losing badly. They were suffering heavy casualties. Well, now, with these formerly enslaved people flooding into the North, I can replenish my ranks. And they have a cause to fight. They also have intel. Who knows the terrain better than the people who work the lands in the South? Who knows where the fortresses are? Who's heard the whispering in the private conversations? Yeah, us. So this was strategic for Abraham Lincoln on all fronts. And lastly, but probably most important of all, he could drain their economy. He could break the South. And folks, we were the pivotal point in the Civil War. And I may add that we have fought in every war for this country since then. Who else could be more patriotic than people who were formerly enslaved by this country to turn around and fight for its honor? So this is why I get upset sometimes when people question my patriotism and my dedication to the country. My people have bled and died for this country since its inception and even before it. So you don't have a right to question mine or anyone else's patriotism, especially those who are formerly enslaved. And we have blood in this soil. Anyway, I'll move on. So when people say to me that the GOP is the party that freed the slaves, and, I do want to point out to you guys, you need to get down off your high horse, because I just showed you that Lincoln was not all he was painted out to be. Neither was the GOP. Because one thing that I will point out is this. Well, several things I'll point out. Andrew Johnson was picked up in Lincoln's campaign for his reelection. He rebranded the party, and I think he called it the Northern Union Party or something like that. I may be wrong, but I think it wasn't the Republican Party, it was the Northern Union Party. And he did that in an attempt to appease the folks in the South. So for those who don't know Andrew Johnson was he was a Southerner from Tennessee. And he was a good old boy. And he figured, hey, look, I could pull the Southern vote and I could unionize everybody. And I could win my second term. Well, we all know how that worked out, because shortly after that, he was assassinated, and Andrew Johnson was then left in charge of the Reconstruction period. So there was a period of leniency that took place there, and I believe that was between 1866, 1867. So I could be off on that by a year or two. But Andrew Johnson was very, very lenient to the Southern Democrats and former Confederate generals. And what he did was he gave them their land back that had been confiscated. He basically restored all their privileges back. Now, the progressive Republicans grew tired of this, and they ended up taking over the Senate or the Congress. And that's when they introduced a radical period under Reconstruction, and you saw the election of a lot of black political figures, and you saw the passage of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Now, fast forward a little bit. So that sounds great. Looks like we're making progress. This is the GOP party. Now, this is the history that they want to tell you about, but they don't want to tell you about this part. Fast forward to 1877, and we have the election of Rutherford Hayes. Now, the election of Rutherford Hayes came at a price. Came at a price of all black people living in the South. Because you had the Compromise of 1877 that took place in order to get Rutherford Hayes into office. What happened was the election was very close between him and a Southern Democrat, and they were facing a constitutional crisis. Now remember, not too long before this, they had just went through a civil war. And at the time, the North the economy wasn't doing so well. They were paying a lot of money to have troops stationed in the South to enforce Reconstruction. So they were growing weary. So what to do? Well, they didn't want another civil war to ensue because of this constitutional crisis, so they had to come up with a remedy soon. So what they did was they got some Democrats from the South and some Republicans. They all got together. They made a backroom deal. A part of that deal was that the North was going to remove all troops immediately from the South. And they were basically going to leave the South to their own devices. And in exchange, Rutherford B. Hayes would become president because the South would no longer contest the election results. So with that, the Compromise of 1877 was born. And when that happened, almost immediately after the withdrawal of the troops from the South by the North, terror and hell rained down on the black folks who were left behind. You then had the introduction of the Black Codes, the KKK, and Jim Crow. That would lead to another 100 years of oppression in the South. So folks, this is the history that the Republican Party does not want to tell you about. I point back to Frederick Douglass, who I believe was in 1862, made a speech, "What is the 4th of July?" to the Negro. He basically criticized the hypocrisy of then the Whig Party and the Democratic Party, called out the hypocrisy of the entire nation because nothing that either party put in place was to benefit the Negro or the black man at the time. This country was not founded based on the equality and freedoms for us. We were not necessarily included in that. That came later through us forcing the issue. So when people try to tell me that the party of Lincoln was a benevolent party, I don't buy it because history does not speak of it that way. That's not what's reflected in the facts. And when I look at the Democratic Party, I can tell you right now the Democratic Party has its dark history. So both parties are guilty. So just like Frederick Douglass, who joined the Republican Party later after its formation in 1864, it was purely transactional. And that's all politics really is. It's transactional. And you may ask why some people are members of one party over the other, and specifically why black people are members of the Democratic Party. It's transaction. It's transactional. Frederick Douglass said it perfectly. The Republican Party is the deck. Everything else is the sea. And if you don't know what he meant by that, he basically said, look, this was the only safe place at the time for the formerly enslaved. Not that he necessarily agreed with them on all things, but that any place else, they would be drowning themselves in the sea of the Southern Democrats who are steeped in white supremacy and slavery. That's what he meant. And for those that don't know, Frederick Douglass went on to criticize the Republican Party throughout the rest of his career, but they don't want to tell you that. So no, the Democratic Party of today is not perfect, and I criticize them as well as I give them credit for the things that they do. Our relationship is purely transactional, just like I understand that their relationship with us is transactional. And that's why I don't support the Republican Party of today. But I wanted to give you just some context and some facts about who Abraham Lincoln was, the conditions leading up to the war, and what happened after the war, and how we got to where we are today. I've already put up a post talking about the election in 1964, Barry Goldwater election, and the migration of the Southern Democrats, or the Dixiecrats as they were so affectionately known as. But everything's transactional, folks, and politics will never be your answer to everything. It is merely a method of survival. Anyway, I hope that helped out, and I'm going to continue to speak on this. I'm going to continue to speak on it until God tells me, all right, it's time to move on. But I think that'll be a long time from now. You all take care. Be blessed.